Hello and welcome back to Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. Episode 4 of this series we are putting together, Euro 2020 files, had a good response to the first ones we've put up. First one was with former Chief Executive of the SFA Stuart Regan, second one with former St Mirren Academy manager David Longwell, and the third former Scotland international Stuart McCall. So if you haven't checked them out, do that after you've watched this video with our fourth guest, Andy Webster. And yeah, plenty of Euro 2020 build up across our channel. We did a prediction video as well earlier today as you watch this, but perhaps on the Thursday. But if not, you can watch that ahead of Friday's kickoff between Turkey and Italy and Scotland v Czech Republic on Monday, 14th of June. This episode, as already mentioned, with Andy Webster, who had a very long international career with Scotland, starting in 2003 with the Bertie Vogts era coming into play and ended in 2012 with Craig Levine's era as Scotland manager. So pretty long career, 9 years, fairly decent whack. He had a bit of a spell where he wasn't in the squad in the middle of that as well, but overall a very decent Scotland career for Andy Webster. So hope you do enjoy talk about all sort of things, his caps, what he's doing now in the St Mirren Academy. We have a theme going here in these ones, and you'll see that in episode 5 as well. So what he's doing now in the St Mirren Academy, his playing days, whether that was with the Scotland national team and how his form at Clubs like Hearts helped that out, and lots of other different bits. Of course, talking about the current squad and their chances at the Euros this summer. Hope you do enjoy it. Do remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time. Did you get to watch we're recording this after, I know this might be out after Scotland's first Euro game, but recording this just after played the Netherlands in the friendly. Don't know how positive we'll be after the first Euro game or not, but certainly after the Holland game, very positive.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great way to lead yourself into a major tournament, playing against a real top nation, world-class quality as well. So, no, I think everything that went in the lead up to that game in terms of obviously Flecky having to isolate and then people who are close contacts and having to isolate and all that type of scenario. So, you know, the group's done exceptionally well during that game. And I'm sure they'll see it all as a positive. Probably disappointing not to win the match because it got so close to the end, but I think on that, as I say, they'll take all the positives from that and move into the next game.
Yeah. Have you pulled off any strikes like Jack Hendry did in your career?
Probably not, and nowhere near in terms of doing it at that level as well. So, yeah, just shows you how much your centre half's evolved over the years.
Yeah, definitely an exciting time. When you were obviously in and about the Scotland national team, I know eventually at one point in time Scotland had to go back to a major tournament, surely. But were you always sort of hoping that it would be your group, of course?
I think everybody does. I think obviously initially you want to play international football, and when you get that opportunity, you want to qualify for a major tournament as well, so you can have that experience and achievement. So no, I think the group over the course of it, especially under the manager, have been exceptionally good. The standard of the play has been excellent. The quality of players that they have within that group is of a real high level as well. So I think they'll quietly have high expectations going into this tournament coming up.
The Scotland national team, and I suppose just Scottish football in general, has quite a high amount of pressure on it, pretty much wherever you are. And I can imagine going into this sort of major tournament, probably in terms of like the pressure that comes with it and the noise that comes with it and things like that, you'll have had a fair bit of it with the national team, but this will be on another level, probably something we've not seen for probably since 1998.
Yeah, yes, it has been a while, which is great that it's come about now. I think on that as well, for the group, and especially now in during current circumstances as well, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but they'll be in their own bubble. They will, yes, they'll have access to like the media and social media and all that type of stuff, but all you really focus on when you're in that environment is training as a group, bonding as a group, and making sure you're ready for the matches. So I think on that you can focus a little bit more on yourself. Sometimes you don't always hear the external noise. If you don't really want to, you don't have to. I get the fact a lot of players now are on social media, so I'm sure they'll see a bit of it, but I'm sure it'll all be positive, and everybody wants them to do exceptionally well.
Yeah, it's probably the first time we've actually seen everybody in Scottish football all band together. Even with the national team, there's a lot of splits, especially sort of in that sort of maybe late noughties, early sort of 2010s period, and the nation actually seems to be banding together for this one.
Yeah, I think, and that's the joys of the group being successful. It galvanises a nation. I think for us as Scotland fans over years, we've always felt that we could achieve something, and it's always been nearly. So I think that now that, as I say, the group's managed to get to a major tournament, that, as I say, it will galvanise the nation. We will all enjoy this, because fingers crossed it's not in the too distant future. But as we've seen over the past few period of time, you never know when it's going to happen again. So yes, one, for us as fans, we need to enjoy it, but two, obviously the players need to go out and do themselves proud and the country proud.
Yeah. Probably, as you've alluded to sort of initially starting, it's probably not ideal. I think it's mainly been contained by obviously John Flex and on a training bike or something in Marbella or wherever he is. It's probably, I mean, I wondered at the time, I'm not saying like they're not following protocols, but I did find it slightly strange that there's the Czech Republic and Croatia training in St Andrews and the Orium, and Scotland are flying out to prepare for games at Hampden and the Algarve. But I suppose just a sign of the times that COVID's still kicking about.
Yeah, I think regarding that for Flecky, obviously being stuck in Marbella, you'd like to be outside enjoying some of the weather, but John and his complexion, and I don't think the sun necessarily agrees with him, so he might be relatively happy that he's stuck in his hotel room on a bike. So no, I think everybody obviously makes their best laid plans. I think when you talked about the two nations there being based in Scotland, I think they've cancelled their plans to be in Scotland as well. So yeah, I think just during this turbulent time as well, people are just going to have to be adaptable.
If probably they're probably looking back at Scotland now. I mean, I'm assuming that they would have liked to have used the Orium and things like that they've used for countless months, and then obviously it must slightly frustrating that it gets to maybe a day before Croatia are flying over. It's like, nah, I'm all right.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Countries are going to have to be adaptable. You've seen that with Scotland and their game last night as well. It might potentially be an issue for countries during the tournament as well. So you just have to have a bit of a plan B and make sure if anything arises that you can manage that situation.
I know you touched on John Fleck, but anybody else in that sort of squad that you played with or are close with?
Obviously, I played with probably the older clientele in the group. So, like say Craig Gordon, spent a lot of time at Hearts together, and Scotland as well. David Marshall would have been involved in that group. So, no, I really, especially now I've always been a fan, but a bit more of a backseat. When you look at the group now, the quality that they have, and this is a bit we touched on about the pressures and whatever else. These obviously people like Andrew Robertson, who's the captain of the countries, he's won the Premiership, he's won the Champions League. People like Kieran Tierney are playing at the highest level in England. John McGinn, Scott McTominay. These boys they play at that level for a reason, because they enjoy and they relish the challenge of testing themselves against the best, not just domestically in the English Premier League, but across the globe as well, with countries and obviously the European Championships now. So I think these boys will relish this opportunity, and without getting too carried away as a Scotland fan, like have relatively high expectations going into this. What that looks like, I'm not quite sure, and that's obviously for the group to decide. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think as well, like, not to be disrespectful, MD that's got a call up, but I mean, if you look at some of the players who perhaps have got a call up and maybe got one or two caps in the last maybe 10 years, none of them would get anywhere near this squad, at least in my lifetime anyway. It's probably, don't want to big them up too much, but when you've got Billy Gilmore on the bench and things like that, and as you say, Scott McTominay, John McGinn and things like that in midfield, it's a very strong group, and a lot of them, don't want to compare too much to England, but a lot of them probably would get in the England squad at this moment in time, which is the usual comparison when it comes to us.
Yeah, and I think, as I say, I think like as you said as well, the quality within the group is really high, and yeah, the technical levels that these players operate at as well. It's always hard to compare different eras and different groups of players and teams and such like, but I genuinely believe that technically, and we've probably got the best group that we've had for a long period of time, just with the standard that they all play at, the levels that they all play at, and as you say, even for some of the younger players who are involved, and Billy Gilmore's just won the Champions League. Nathan Patterson's been exceptional at Rangers as well. So these boys will be going into that group full of confidence, and that's a huge aspect when in any major tournament, that they're all performing at a high level, and they just maintain that and see where it takes them.
I think in terms of the defence as well, watching that Holland game, I mean, Kieran Tierney is probably the one that, along with John McGinn, I would predict is the nation's probably most excited about. I think he was third in Arsenal's Player of the Year for last season. He probably, in terms of defensive options, he's the one that is the real standout just now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think obviously you've got Andrew Robertson in there as well, depending on what formation the manager uses. But this is the bit where you get like John McGinn and Kieran Tierney. They have the Scottish traits, so they have the working hard. And when you listen to Mikel Arteta talk about Kieran Tierney, just says he's an absolute machine. His willingness to work hard, his dedication. You go level that with the quality that he's got, and same with people like John McGinn. That, as I said, these boys are at a different level now, which is great. These boys excel in the English Premiership, never mind any other environment. So, as I said, that's why expectations will be slightly higher going into this tournament, which is great for them. And as I said, they'll excel in that environment because that's what they do.
In terms of your sort of Scotland career, touching on it, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, if Wikipedia's wrong, 28 caps, starting for sort of 2005 and Craig Levein recalled you in 2012. That's pretty, even though let's just say some caps were handed out perhaps a bit easily in that period, to rack up that amount is still fairly decent. Must be proud of that.
Yeah, I think obviously I made my debut when I just turned 21 under Bertie Vogts, and it was a transitional period for the nation. Obviously under the previous regime, probably an ageing squad, and Bertie Vogts' remit was probably to introduce younger players, which, as you say, a lot of people got an opportunity to play for their country, which any footballer growing up's desperate to do. I'd like to think that I maybe prolonged my stay rather than just one cap, and there was a few people during that period as well. Probably like Craig Gordon, Gary Caldwell, James McFadden, Darren Fletcher, who performed at a really high level for the nation and went on to win loads of caps and have a real impact as well. So as much as we didn't get to a major tournament, there was still a lot of quality within that group at that period of time. But it's thankfully now they've broke the mould and qualified for a major tournament, which hopefully, fingers crossed, makes it slightly easier going forward for the next major tournament as well.
I'm perhaps a bit too young to remember sort of the Bertie Vogts era. I think I was probably about 4 when you made your debut, not to make you feel too old. But it was probably wasn't a great time to be a Scotland international, if that makes sense from what I gather. It was quite a I don't want to say poisonous atmosphere, but it definitely wasn't positive like it is now.
It was turbulent, I would say. Whether being young, naive, I didn't care. I just wanted to play. Do you know? And obviously, don't get me wrong. Once you get there and you play, you want to do well for your country. You represent your country at the highest level. It's a real proud moment, achievement that you can. So you want to do well. You don't want to let anybody down. It's just, as I say, it was that transitional period where the nation had to kind of head, or the team had to head in a bit of a different direction. So it took a little bit of time to get through that sort of turbulent period and for the team to be a bit more settled and try and head in the right direction in terms of getting results and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't an easy period for anybody involved, and I'm sure the manager probably felt that more than most.
I think as well for you, I mean, to pretty much in terms of the squad, I know international man, you can, given the length of career, you can perhaps outstay probably a few managers to get to sort of that period under like Craig Levein, albeit again perhaps didn't go as well. Was fairly decent as well, because by that time there probably was a core of you that were in the squads fairly regularly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the initial part of playing under Bertie Vogts, then Walter Smith for a period, and then when I went back, obviously Craig Levein got me back involved in the Scotland squad. I think that's a bit where I had a bit of a gap in between. I think when you go back, you try, or you enjoy it a little bit more. You don't take anything like that for granted, and then being back involved with him, and then Gordon Strachan for a period of time, and obviously under Gordon, you know, the national team results started to go in the right direction. I think, you know, Steve Clarke's obviously picked up the baton and excelled as well, which is great. And everybody who's been part of that journey over the last 10, 20, 30 years will all take a small part of pride to go, finally, we've got to a major tournament.
So what we're saying is that you're taking slight credit for Scotland getting there. You've put in all the hard yards and the disappointing results, perhaps at games you should have won to get them here.
Yeah, I don't know about contributing on an individual basis, but I think when you look back and people have had a bit of success, sometimes you have to trace it back. So you look at Chelsea, even with the Champions League victory as well. If Frank Lampard hadn't done what he done, would they have been in the same position as well? So I think sometimes, not for me personally, but sometimes it's nice to recognise a little bit that's been before, maybe putting in some of the foundations and the building blocks for that success. So no, we all, regardless if we played, didn't play, we all take immense pride in the nation being at a major tournament.
I was just looking sort of in that perhaps gap that you had in the national team. Do you end up playing for the Scotland B team as well? I mean, that must have been slightly odd. Yeah. Who was pretty much a full international by that point, being chucked in the B team, whatever that was.
Yeah, I think I'd obviously spent a period of time out, and then George Burley was a Scotland manager, and I'd obviously worked with George previously at Hearts as well. I was just kind of getting myself back to a level. So I'm sure we played Northern Ireland at Broadwood in a friendly, and probably not that these are the kind of things you remember as a defender. I'm sure I scored in that game as well, which is always nice. So yeah, anytime you represent your country, it's a huge, huge honour.
There's a couple of these called back, wasn't to Paul Dixon and Gary Kenneth as well. I think were called back in alongside you.
Yeah, and I remember obviously Paul Dixon was doing exceptionally well at Dundee United at the time, and I'm sure he played in a couple of the games. There's like maybe a double header, and he played in both and one man of the match. So it just shows you that, you know, people who do come into the setup and get an opportunity can excel in that environment as well, and something that I'm sure he'll look back on fondly, having done well during that period.
In terms of the national team, then obviously Euros are, as we record this, are slowly coming upon us. No, we've touched on it a wee bit, but especially after the sort of year we've had, especially in football, you've been in it, and we'll talk about it a bit with St Mirren's youth teams and things like that. It's not been an easy time for football in the last maybe 14 months or so.
Yeah, it's been really challenging for everybody. You know, we've been fortunate enough to, football's been a bit of a mainstay during that period of time, or laterally as well, which has obviously helped everybody. So no, I think footballers, and I've seen Andrew Robertson's interview the other day as well about not taking things for granted. So just obviously making sure that everybody follows the guidelines during this period, but it also probably had more of a spotlight on the nation and football because we've not had too much else. Probably back at the start during COVID, but yeah, football's been the kind of shining light for everybody. So yeah, I think it's probably helped us as a nation.
How do you think Scotland will get on? I think it's quite a tough group. Croatia was at 2018 World Cup finalists, and then England, as much as they'll talk about going to the final and inevitably get put out at the last 16, they'll still be decent opponents, sort of group stage wise, and Czech Republic as well, a team that Scotland have come up against a lot. So it's I don't think it's quite as hard as that group is. I think it's got France, Germany, and Portugal in it. I don't think it's quite on that level, but it's definitely difficult.
Yeah, of course it is, and it's going to be the only one good thing, or a good thing about being in that group is, you know, every match is going to be extremely difficult, and you know you're going to have to perform at the highest levels to get anything out of it, which is great for the group. It's a challenge that I'm sure they'll all embrace as well. So yeah, the games will have slightly different outcomes in terms of what's in front of them. As you say, Croatia being a major final. We all know what the rivalry is like between Scotland and England as well. So these matches will take slightly different. There'll be slightly different things riding on it, but yeah, ultimately it'll be real tough tests. And if Scotland can get anything from the matches and ultimately the group as well, they'll have done well.
I think even if they went out after 3 games, it's been so long to get put out pretty much in the space of 8 days, would perhaps be a bit of a damp squid for some after so long, but Scotland surely aren't going to be favoured to get out this group with England and Croatia in it, you wouldn't think.
Yeah, and I think the good thing for the group as well is that people, apart from maybe us as a nation in the group, they'll have low expectations. They'll not expect anything. The storyline will be Scotland's not been at a major tournament for a long period of time. They'll just be happy to be there. I don't know too much about it, but I can imagine on the inside of that group they'd be like, no, we're here to make an impact. So I think quietly they'll fancy their chances, and if they, as I say, if they perform with the quality that they've got, you just don't know where it can take them.